In November, voters will choose Detroit's next mayor.
The mayor's job is not to educate the kids. The mayor's job is to create an environment whereby we can have quality education for our kids.
Detroit has been plagued with high insurance rates, auto and car. They also have been plagued with redlining, all types of discrimination from banks and financial institutions.
People are looking at how municipalities manage their own situations. We will send a huge signal to everyone that we are prepared to take control of our government.
Welcome back to the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. The stakes are high in Detroit's primary tomorrow. But right now, fewer than 10% of registered voters have participated. Most of those ballots have been mailed in. In-person early voting, which began July 26 and ended yesterday, was minimal. That's a little surprising this year, given Michigan's no-excuse absentee law. Voters approved it in 2018. It lets anyone request a mail-in ballot without needing a reason. Now, this is also the city's first competitive mayoral race in over a decade. Mayor Mike Duggan is running for governor of Michigan. In other words, it's a pivotal chance for leadership change. But turnout so far doesn't yet reflect this moment. Meanwhile, voter accessibility has been a question. During the 2021 election, disability advocates filed an ADA complaint saying key voting information, like where and how to vote, was inaccessible online for users of screen readers, and that was affecting thousands of Detroiters. And as we will hear later on, a lot of polling locations across Metro Detroit remain inaccessible to voters with disabilities. Joining us now is Detroit's top election official, City Clerk Janice Winfrey. She's held the office since 2005. Clerk Winfrey, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you for having me here.
So with under 10% turnout so far, and much of that by mail, not in person, what's that telling you about Detroiters' engagement with this election?
Well, it's telling me that they're disinterested. That I feel as though perhaps they're losing hope in the democratic process, and that's unfortunate. A lot of it, I think, stems from our leader, our presidential leader. When you, as a leader of this great country, say things like voting doesn't matter, it's not fair, they cheat, that would oftentimes lead to, I think, voter apathy. And I think that's what we're realizing. But I want to address something you said earlier because it's not accurate. As it relates to accessibility in our polling locations, out of over 200, just over 200 buildings, or just under 200 buildings we've condensed, less than 5 don't meet the accessibility requirements. Oftentimes, and we work closely with CREO, which stands for our Civil Rights, Inclusive, and Opportunity. And we want to ensure and make sure that voting is accessible. We have a team that we work with to ensure that. But oftentimes, people don't know the law as it relates to accessibility in the polling locations. The law, election law, speaks to that the entrance of the polling location must be accessible. That's it. And that, of course, we have the machines, the accessible machines, and the like. But other than that, that's it. Oftentimes, individuals look for the bathrooms, the lavatories to be accessible, the water fountains, although they should be. Yeah. That's not what election law says for us.
Sure, and that presents a lot of problems because we know there are a lot of old buildings in the city.
Absolutely.
And so that's a conundrum for you, I'm sure. And so what you're saying then, we're referring to Detroit Disability Powers audit of nearly 300 Metro Detroit polling sites, that only 13% were fully accessible, but that includes all of Metro Detroit. So you're saying within the city limits proper, there are 5 problem locations
Yes,
still.
I only administer elections in the city
Right.
of Detroit.
Right. What about disability advocates saying that voting info wasn't screen reader accessible during the 2021 election? What specific fixes have you made this cycle online or in person to help voters with disabilities?
Yeah, we've done a lot. We've hired a lot of a new IT leader for us. Again, we work with CREO. We work with Warriors on Wheels. We've established a committee that deals just with accessibility at every level, and many of those people in that report that you just cited, not many of them, but some of them work with us. And I reached out to them after that report, and they were like, "This is not what we agreed to. This is not what we said." We have individuals that are limited in sight or blind, those who are in wheelchairs and the like. And we asked them to go out to each of our polling locations prior to the 2020 elections to help us determine if a place is accessible. And they did find in one place in particular that just floored me. At the elevator, it was in Braille, right? And we had thought, okay, great, But when someone that represented the blind community, when they used it, they said, "This is upside down." How would we know?
Gosh.
How would we know if we didn't go that extra step and have them go out to our polling locations to ensure that our polling locations are accessible? So it often makes me feel a way when people say that we aren't accessible and we don't go the extra mile, because we do. We do.
One of the issues mentioned in the report is training for poll workers. So not just infrastructure and some of these issues that you're outlining that explain why this is really an uphill battle. So how do you train poll workers to meet the challenges of the day right now and improve accessibility for folks?
Inclusivity. We include all demographics for poll workers. We do have some poll workers that fit in that description of accessibility or inaccessibility. We do deal with poll workers that speak several languages. We work closely with CREO, with the city of Detroit, like I said, but unfortunately, oftentimes, as we get closer to elections, they kind of drift off because they don't have the resources to help us any further. So we on our own recruit people that we think would make it more efficient, make our process more inclusive, because they see things differently than we do.
It sounds to me, Clerk Winfrey, like you're talking a lot about the value of outreach. And I want to zoom out and talk about outreach more broadly when it comes to, let's say, outreach toward young people, faith communities, or in underrepresented areas. What kind of neighborhood level outreach has your office done? And are you seeing that work translate into engagement or registrations?
Not enough. Registration, yes. 98% of those individuals who are eligible and can register and want to register to vote are registered to vote. It's not the registration, it's the participation. What do we do to get out there? We hit every neighborhood. Every council district has an early voting. We have over 30 drop boxes throughout the city of Detroit. And we engage every high school in the city of Detroit, every Detroit public school in the city of Detroit. We go out there and we begin to engage those individuals at 16. We talk to them about the importance of voting. We hold mock elections. We hire them, and that's significant, because we hire them at 16, and once we hire them, we know we have them, right? Once we hire them, we ensure that next year they're registered voters, right? And that they participate in the process, because now they're poll workers. And for us, poll workers, we have our own election day, which is typically the Tuesday before the real election day, just to ensure and make sure that everybody that works with us is voting, because we realize that we're our poll workers so busy getting trained and setting up their locations the day before. Often, and on election day, they find themselves, oh, I forgot to vote. No. So we have our own in-house. But in terms of getting out to the various neighborhoods, I think Detroit is I don't want to say the only, but we recently, within the last couple of election cycles, under the leadership of Councilman Scott Vincent, we were able to open a polling location in a mosque. And for us, that's big. We do things like that. We also have, we hire poll workers who speak Spanish, who speak Arabic, and the like, and we place them out in those communities on purpose. I was at Clark Park last week now, because I like to visit the early vote centers. And I was so pleased, and I told my deputy of training, I was so pleased when I saw the demographics of that community actually working. Older men and women that were of Middle Eastern descent working as poll workers. It was at least 4 or 5. And I came back and I said, you know what, this is what it's supposed to look like. The poll workers should reflect the community that they're working in. It makes everyone feel safe and comfortable and ensures that the language barrier is at a minimum.
So with poll workers, you're recruiting young people
Absolutely.
who then you have a forever voter right there. And you're recruiting people who reflect the diversity of the communities that they live in.
That's correct.
Which then, as you're noting, really does put people at ease.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about the issue of turnout and the fact that it is not only a Detroit problem. And what's making me think about this is actually a conversation that I had with some of my colleagues this morning, and it was about a social media post from the city of Detroit. And it was in response to a Detroit Free Press column. The column argues that voter turnout is a crisis in Detroit. The city pointed out that many suburban communities here had even lower turnout. I'm wondering for you, Clerk Winfrey, as Detroit's top election official, how do you see Detroit's turnout rate fitting into broader statewide patterns? I mean, something you mentioned earlier is that you think this is emblematic of a larger cultural, political problem, and you pointed to President Trump.
Yeah. So your question is?
My question is, how do you see Detroit's turnout rate fitting into broader statewide patterns?
Well, not just statewide, but nationally. So I'm very active with the National League of Cities, and we see all across the board that turnout is low, that people are disinterested. But I also think that I know that candidates also drive turnout. When people are excited about the candidate one way or the other, they show up and they show out. But when they're not so excited about the candidates, and now I'm speaking more locally, I guess, when they're not so excited about the candidates, when the candidates aren't out there beating the bushes and paving the pavement and going to those neighborhoods that you think they don't vote, going to those unrepresented areas, when they aren't doing that, the people become disinterested. When they do those kinds of things, people become interested. Oh, you care about us? You know? Oh, we're lower income over here. You actually want to talk to me? Yes, I do. I want to engage you. I want to ask for your vote. I want to ask for your support. When candidates do those kinds of things, you rally the people and they show up. Turnout is largely driven by candidates, but it's a community's right and it's a community's call to action to participate in the process.
So you're saying that you don't necessarily think that the candidates this time around have inspired that kind of fervor, that kind of widespread passion?
I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but in some instances, that is correct. You'll see one or two working really hard, but you should see mailings, you should see people canvassing the neighborhoods. That's what I'm used to seeing. You should see people in the grocery stores bothering me, asking me if I know of them or if I would support. I don't see that. And it's unfortunate.
Well, and I've gathered you take this personally.
I do.
You told Bridge Detroit it's, quote, hurtful to see a lack of interest in many local offices. That article pointed out you aren't facing a primary candidate either. So you're pointing to candidates, though, and what you see missing from them. But we also know that voter apathy is a problem, too. Is it part of your job to combat voter apathy?
So if you read the charter, my job is very vague and simple. It's not vague, but it's simple. And that is to administer the elections, ensure that voters know when Election Day is, and then provide for places where they go and vote. That's it. But that's not enough for me because I'm not doing all what I do. I'm not doing all this work and not having you get out the vote. So I go the extra mile. I hold block parties. I do giveaways. I serve the community in a broader sense. I'm going to purposely go over and beyond because it's very disappointing for us to put in all the work that we put in and then we don't get what we want in return. That would be for any job. So yeah, the charter doesn't say that I'm responsible for turnout, but I say that I'm responsible for turnout, just like you're responsible for turnout. The elections is a community event. It's not Janice Winfrey event. It's not Department of Elections event. It is a community event, and we all must be engaged if we want to live the quality of life that we say we want to live, right? We all must be responsible for the turnout. So if you aren't engaging your neighbors and your friends and your family members that you think might not vote, if you're not engaging them, then shame on you. Because I engage the Divine Nine, and I engage community-based organizations that are nonpartisan, and I engage all of the churches so that we can get the vote out in the city of Detroit.
This reminds me of a conversation we had last week with a researcher from University of Michigan, Mata Ostfeld, and she was saying that when it comes to the average person, the most powerful thing, the most effective thing that people can do is post about it. Post about it on social media that they voted. Tell their friends and family that they voted, that has this contagion kind of effect that's really powerful. So for people listening who are saying, what can I do to shore up participation, it really, there are things that folks can do on a super local individual level.
There are things people should be doing on an individual, very local level. And posts are good. When you post something on social media, good for you. That's nice. But it's more effective if you say, Andre, my next door neighbor who's 20, did you vote? Are you going to vote?
Need a ride to the poll, Andre?
Absolutely. You need to know where to go. I think I'm the only clerk in the city of Detroit that sends out a sample ballot for every election every time, that gives you not only the name, the news of the day as it relates to election, but it gives you the candidates by district, and that's on the ballot, and it also has it in different languages so that we reach everyone. It also tells you where you can go and vote early, where your drop boxes are. Every clerk should be doing this, in my opinion.
Clerk Winfrey, if turnout, though, if it does sit at the lower end of the spectrum in this primary, what lessons will you apply in preparation for November's general? What's changing or what needs to change?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. I was talking about it on the way here because that's what we do. You know, for every election, we look at what our numbers are going to be, and then we look at what we can do differently to increase it. So I do have a plan. And it's a guaranteed plan. I don't want to share it all with you, but I can guarantee in my plan that I will have at least 500 voters at the Department of Elections on the first day of early voting in the general election, right? I'm going to guarantee that. And that's just at one of our facilities. But we're going to cast a broader net. See, I didn't depend on, but because we always do our own. But we enlisted the help of a company to help us to get the word out, help us to get the turnout out. And I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed. So I'm going to go back and do it my way. But we try. We try these are event planners, and this is what they do. And they do a wonderful job closing off the street and setting up but when you guarantee me numbers and I'm not getting them, and I see what your thing is mostly social media, I'm more of knocking on those doors, putting out those mailers. I'm more of a direct approach with the community that I want to reach. So we're kind of going back to the drawing board for November. And I was just talking to my director, the deputy clerk, and sharing with him what we're going to do differently. And then I'm going to engage one of the younger supporters and partners that we have in a deeper way, because I think she does a good job of getting the younger people out, getting their attention through social media and other technology that they use. So, yeah, we do have a plan.
You're constantly reassessing, it sounds like, asking what works and what doesn't work.
Absolutely.
Clerk Winfrey, before we let you go in the last 30 seconds we have here, for people who haven't voted yet, what's the quickest step before polls close tomorrow?
To go out and visit your polling location on tomorrow. We open at 7 o'clock a.m. and we close at 8 o'clock p.m. If an individual wants to vote by absentee, they can still do that. They have to go to West Grand Boulevard or the clerk's office, pick up their absentee ballot, and they have to have it in the mail or one of our drop boxes, so that we can receive it by 8 o'clock p.m. on election night.
Detroit City Clerk Janice Winfrey, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be right back on the Metro. Stay with us.